So, if Jim Cotta and Escape from New York had ever hooked up and had a baby, it would be Brick Mansions. Well, more accurately, if Jim Cotta and Escape from New York had a three-way with New Jack City and nobody was quite sure who the daddy was, it would be Brick Mansions. So, the premise of Brick Mansions, which is a remake of the supposedly superior French film, it's not, I've seen it, uh, District B13, is that a section of Detroit, a group of projects known as the Brick Mansions, have gotten so bad that the government of Detroit has decided to wall it off and just say, fuck it, let it rot. Something like what happened in Arkham City or Escape from New York. And in the film, you have two different heroes with two different reasons to go back into Brick Mansions and face essentially the same villain. Hero number one is Paul Walker as a cop who's trying to stop a stolen nuclear bomb from going off. Paul Walker is the best thing in the movie, at least as an actor. As a cop, his character is a barely fleshed out generic action hero guy. With the generic action hero motivation, my father, brother, mother, sister, somebody is dead and somebody is gonna pay. And it's so generic and so unfleshed out that it's ultimately not very memorable. David Bell, he's French, so his name is probably pronounced David Bell or something like that, is a Brick Mansion's resident who is trying to clean up one of the buildings of drugs and other negative things. He's the second best thing in the movie. He's a decent actor. He's also playing a generic action guy, the one that I will save the community and no one else cares about the community but me. Incidentally, David Bell is actually the same actor who played the same part in the original French film. He's also one of the people who invented parkour, which is essentially the other star of this movie. This is a movie that takes parkour and elevates it to the status of a martial art. In exactly the way that Jim Cotta tried to do with gymnastics back in the 80s. Now, David Bell is okay. He's a great parkour guy, but he's only a decent actor. But he's still better than almost everyone else in the movie. Your villain, such as it is the RZA, and he is a really generic villain guy. He's clearly inspired by New Jack City's Nino Brown and The Wire Stringer Bell. He's a drug kingpin who tries to think like a businessman, or, well, he's Luc Besson's idea of a drug dealer who thinks like a businessman. But the RZA is not an actor, and we know that because we've seen the RZA act before. At times, his acting is so bad it sounds almost like he can't pronounce his actual dialogue. It's almost like watching a bad sci-fi movie where the actors can't pronounce technobabble, except he's got business babble, and he doesn't seem to even know how to say what he's saying. It's a weird thing to watch. There's no mentor in this movie whatsoever. The best you have is Paul Walker's character has a grandfather who would rather see him quit than continue on his quest slash vendetta for revenge against the man who killed his father. Because, generic action hero, somebody had to die somewhere in the past. Um, for allies, the only ally in the movie at all is David Bell's girlfriend, who is the ally slash hostage slash bait slash eye candy. And she is such blatant eye candy in this movie. It's literally the only reason why she's in this movie is because she's an attractive woman, and it's like gratuitously so. She spends the entire movie in a micro mini skirt. The only other female in the movie is walking around in essentially a leather corset and hot pants. And of course, the two of them have a cat fight with tons and tons of slow motion. Um, the enemies in the film are a wide range of the RZA's henchmen of varying shapes and sizes, including the woman in corset and hot pants. Each one of the villains is only memorable because of their different shapes and sizes, certainly not because of any alleged acting that is supposedly in this movie. It's not. The upside of this film is that this is one of those movies that works as a sort of a popcorn munching, mindless entertainment thing, the sort of thing that you watch on a lazy Saturday afternoon when you're just passing time waiting for sports to come on. I would actually compare it to watching sort of like the black belt theater kung fu movies that we grew up watching as kids on, whatever channel that came on in your neighborhood. And for that, it is successful mostly. The downside of this film is that this film has no idea that it is that kind of a grade B, grade Z action film. It thinks that it is the urban born identity. It thinks that it's going to actually earn some kind of respect as a film, that it is some kind of groundbreaking action film that deserves a higher place in the film hierarchy. It's not. It's just an empty action film on the level of not quite the quality of, but in the style of, say, The Expendables. The kind of thing where you check your brain at the door, mandatory. It's not any better than that, and the people making this film really, really, really think it is. And no. And also the acting. After Paul Walker and David Bell, no one in this film can act at all, not even a little bit. Every actor in this film is literally terrible. Not okay, not mediocre. They actually suck. I mean, it's painful to watch. And the plot. Years ago, Jackie Chan once described old kung fu movies in an interview as being one excuse for a fight scene after another, just to keep the action going. That's exactly what happens in this film. It's just one excuse for a silly fight scene after another. Um, Seriously, there's actually a fight scene in this movie that is over the keys to a truck. That's all. Just okay. I want the keys. No, I want the keys. And then they have a fight scene over the keys to the truck. Um, and also, the end of this movie dissolves into complete and total bullshit. The way the movie ends is something that could not happen, and it is too much nonsense to even contemplate that as a possibility. The ending is dumb, really dumb. As I was watching this movie, I was thinking this was going to be like 2.5 stars, but as I started doing the review and just as the list of the downs of this movie just kept going and going and going, despite the fact that I didn't have a bad time watching this film, um, it's just this movie is 1.5 stars just because it's too silly, too poorly acted, too poorly plotted. It doesn't have enough of an upside to even make 2 stars. So 1.5 stars for Brick Mansions.